Gaku is extremely underrated. Since my time in the Sakamoto Days community, I've realized that people don't have a real appreciation for how strong Gaku really is. When we first get introduced to Gaku, it's when him and Slur are on their way to the JAA. Gaku is shown as just some cool silver-haired guy that seems to do all the dirty work for Slur. But this is the moment we get to see just how cold Gaku really is. The first thing that Gaku does when he enters the building is just totally obliterate anybody that's in his way. Now, it's pretty easy to undermine this compared to all the high tiers in the verse, but at the end of the day, the JAA is completely filled with trained assassins. Now, what soon happens after this, I think, is where the majority of the people get their opinion of Gaku, because unfortunately Gaku runs into the old god man himself, Takamaru. But judging Gaku off of this fight is pretty unfair, seeing as Takamaru is literally the strongest man in the verse. I mean, if you really look at the chapter, he literally feels Takamaru's aura down the hallway. And after this, Takamaru just does this man dirty. He takes his ear, his fingers, and his arm. But even so, after Takamaru cuts off Gaku's arm, he literally kicks it at Takamaru as a counterattack, sending Takamaru flying backwards. After our first interaction with Gaku, we still learn a couple of things about him. 1, Gaku almost has an immunity to pain. 2, Gaku's strong enough to be Slur's right-hand man. And 3, Gaku's the coldest guy to ever use a hammer club thing. Later on in this series, when we get introduced to Slur and his whole group, we run into a conversation between Slur and Gaku. And this conversation is very important because it's implied that Gaku and Slur should be able to take each one of the order members one by one, that being Kyo, Osaragi, Shishiba, and Nagumo. But they make sure to leave out the GOAT Takamaru because nobody can beat him. Now, the next time we see Gaku is when he goes to the museum to go fight Nagumo. And for this part, I'm actually going to focus on Nagumo more just to show the extent and the feats of what Gaku does later. Now, Yoichi Nagumo, aka the GOAT, is a part of a group called the Order. The Order is a group comprised of the strongest assassins in the JAA. Now, this already puts into perspective of just how strong Nagumo really is. But not only is he in the Order, he's also an S-rank assassin. Now, there are 3 things that make Nagumo extremely strong. It's 1, his fighting ability, 2, his poisons, and 3, his disguise. Now we get a glimpse of Nagumo's fighting ability when he's put up against the death row inmate Minimalist. This is when we get to see Nagumo's insane disguise ability when he disguises himself as Aoi. In this form, he catches Minimalist off guard and totally bodies him, breaking his arm and stabbing him in the neck. After that, Nagumo reveals himself and shows off one of the coldest weapons in the series, that being the multi-tool. So basically, Minimalist tries to hit Nagumo and he's just speed blitzing him back and forth. He just can't touch Nagumo at all. He's got Minimalist looking goofy, running into aisles and knocking stuff over. It's just bad. And mind you, this guy Minimalist can literally just grab anything and just crush it. Like, this guy's insanely strong. And Nagumo's got him looking goofy. Anyway, Nagumo hits the coldest Uno reverse cards and disguises himself as Minimalist in the window and just grabs the window through the glass and just starts choking him. Then proceeds to have a Kite from a Hunter x Hunter moment, pulls out his weapon and says, "I'll let you choose how you want to die." But anyway, basically the fight ends by Nagumo rolling a dice on Minimalist's tongue. Wait, hold up. Pause, no diddy. Chooses a weapon, then proceeds to go to cut off his head, but somehow he got away. And to put this into perspective, Minimalist is fodder. He's just nothing compared to Nagumo. You really haven't seen anything yet. But later on in the series, we get blessed with the equivalent of Jiraiya versus Orochimaru, and we get Gaku versus Nagumo. But before we talk about the fight, at this point, Nagumo is peak order level, and Gaku should at least be order level through the statement I said earlier. Now the fight starts off with just a whole bunch of trolling when Nagumo says, "Why don't we just look past each other since we're not each other's targets," and then proceeds to try to off-guard Gaku. Now the fight starts off with them swapping blows, showing at least relativity at this point, until Gaku is able to get behind Nagumo and just slam him through multiple walls. But after that, we get a goated statement from Gaku himself saying that Nagumo's not as powerful as him, but speed-wise they're neck and neck. So from this one statement, we get that Nagumo and Gaku are relative in speed, but Gaku's actually stronger. But after that though, Nagumo does his little dice trick, distracts Gaku, and actually is able to get a pretty critical blow on him. Then the fight continues, but then we get another goated statement from Nagumo when he says he's tough, probably the best I've ever fought. Now this statement actually isn't that goated because 1, we have no idea who Nagumo has fought, At this point, that would put Gaku over Minimalist, which really doesn't get you that far. But there is another way to look at it, because we know that Nagumo, Sakamoto, and Ako got into the order by being as strong or stronger than Kandaka. Also, it's stated that Kanaguri killed 2 order members, which could lead to the conclusion that the order members get into a lot of fights. And maybe Nagumo has fought some of the strongest order members. I mean, this is honestly a stretch, but I think it's still a possibility. After that, we get to see Gaku's strongest ability, which we actually don't know the name of. I don't think so at this point. But in this mode, let's call it, Gaku gets increased speed and strength. But even in this mode, Nagumo was still able to catch Gaku off guard with an invisible blade and stab him, therefore giving Gaku less time to fight. But Gaku shows off that insane endurance once again and kind of just starts pummeling Nagumo. The fight continues, but this time Gaku has the upper hand. But the fight kind of devolves into a blow for blow, and the winner at the end of it is Gaku. Gaku came in clutch and beat Nagumo, and I'm trolling. After that, Sakamoto and the gang comes through and sees Nagumo on the floor, bloody pulp, with a whole bunch of blades through him. It's revealed later that Nagumo uses his disguising abilities on Gaku to make it seem that Nagumo lost the fight. But he only did that so Nagumo could catch Uzuki off guard by dressing up as Gaku. But don't worry, Gaku fans, we actually get a goated statement. Uzuki actually says that Nagumo is one of the top 2 fighters in the order, and we know that number 1 is Takamura. But since Takamura is number 1, that means Nagumo is number 2. And in that fight, it's pretty obvious that Gaku and Nagumo are pretty much relative, making Gaku actually top 5 in the verse, on my list at least. So with all the interactions we get with Gaku and all the fights, we get to learn a lot about him, and we get to see how insanely underrated he is. I've seen lists where this guy is under all of the order or top 15. He just doesn't get the respect he deserves. In conclusion, Gaku has proven himself to be a top 5 fighter in the verse. He deserves your respect. And this isn't the last we've seen of Gaku. We know that he's still alive, and there's still more fights to come. Anyways, if you enjoy my content and you want more Sakamoto videos, make sure to put some suggestions down in the comments and give me a subscribe. Peace.